Youre. I am the CEO of Great Big Digital Agency. We are a digital marketing, website building, and analytics and conversion rate optimization company in Philadelphia. We do pretty much everything in the digital space, and that's what this conversation is going to be about today. And pivoting to a digital business and exploring what that looks like, what that's looked like for other industries, and what that could look like for you, and the tools that can help you get there. So I have a presentation that I'm going to be sharing with you guys. So I'm gonna grab this screen share here. Awesome. Do you guys all see my screen? Great. All right. So this conversation is going to, and just to let you guys know the format, I'm going to be going through the presentation, talking a little bit about, going digital and those tools. And then we're going to leave some time at the end for questions, concerns, life philosophies, anything you really want to throw my way, we can talk about. All right. So, going digital, ways to pivot your company in the digital age and the tools to help, right? So again, we are going to be talking about, what digital looks like today, what businesses have done, to pivot in the time of COVID and before, and then some just brief tools and resources to help bring you into this new age and, what to explore while you're there. So, all right. Hi, I'm Josh Silverberg. I talked a little bit about myself. This is me with Ben Franklin. I'm Philly born and raised. This is a real Ben Franklin. I know a Ben Franklin impersonator. If you guys need to hire a Ben Franklin for anything, just let me know. I can get you his number. It's in my speed dial. You can find me at Josh Silverbauer on LinkedIn, also Silverbauer Hour on Twitter, and Instagram at Great Big Digital. All right, so longevity in business is about being able to reinvent yourself or invent the future, right? So basically two different types of, different philosophies of how to approach your business. You can either create the next step or you need to pivot to the next step, right? And so as you, as a business, your job is to not think about yourself as static, but the essence of your business is. And right now that essence needs to conform to the digital age because that is where we are heading. And as we saw in the last 2 months, there's more and more necessity around being digital. And that feeling and that, pivot is not going to go away anytime soon. This, philosophy about being separated is going to blend in even more so with the philosophy of going to places in the future because we are conditioning ourselves right now to buy online, to spend time at home, to, rely more and more on the internet to get us the, what we need from, our day-to-day lives. So again, be part of that future or invent it as a business or else you will not survive. Oh, going backwards. Cool. What does the digital landscape look like now? Here are some statistics. All right. So I've found a lot of these statistics are really interesting. I did a look at, where they were. I found a March 2020 study on where they were. And then we're going to talk about COVID and, trends that we've seen since March 2020. And I thought it was really interesting to see where we were and then what is happening right now. So 1.79 billion people shopped online last year. That is a humongous amount of people. Probably about almost 1/4 of the entire world shopped online. Global e-commerce sales are expected to reach 4.8 trillion. 64% of small businesses have a website. I'm sure more people than that have that now. 260 billion could be recovered. $260 billion could be recovered through improving checkout experiences. And we're going to talk about the overall just funnel on a website and how that affects the overall journey. It's a lot of money that could be saved by just improving the checkout experience. 70% of is the average cart abandonment rate. So think about that as, you know, going into a store and you're about to purchase something. 70% of people walk out of that store without buying anything. 75% of customers expect help online within 5 minutes. So this is, you know, the difference in expectation on actually going somewhere to shop and then actually being online and shopping. 53% of mobile users abandon their visits after 3 seconds of a page to load. So basically, if your site loads slowly, there's about a 50% chance, or even taking 3 seconds to load, there's a 50% chance that people will abandon it. Just 1 second page load delay can cause 7% conversion rate drop off. So people are 7% less likely to buy it the longer the page loads. 88% of consumers research online before making a purchase. So that means that even if you're a brick and mortar store, people are researching online regardless or not, if they're the type of person who likes to go to a store, which is why digital is becoming more and more important. That's, you know, almost 90%, almost all people research online before going into somewhere. And then 7% of users would not recommend the business if they don't have a good mobile website. 40% have turned to a competitor site if there's a bad mobile site. And 84% of 25 to 35-year-olds have dropped off previously liked websites because of a bad user experience. So this just shows you how important, you know, having a good digital experience is for a consumer, right? And it's, especially if you are catering to a younger generation, you know, having a good digital experience is pivotal for them to, you know, even consider you as a brand that they will, you know, shop at. And it's gaining even more momentum with older generations as we are forced to, you know, have a digital business. So according to an eMarketer study on coronavirus trends, US consumers are expected to spend $709 billion on e-commerce in 2020. So that would be a representing increase of 18% this year compared to last year in terms of digital. And brick and mortar retail spending is expected to decrease 14%, right? So the trend, obviously, with coronavirus is that digital will go up and retail will go down, right? And some industries have been hit harder than others, but, you know, for the most part, you know, overall, this is the expected growth and decline based off of digital versus retail. So what can you do, right? Embrace digital, okay? So it's okay if you're sitting there like, I'm not ready yet. Tell me what some other companies have done, you know, and I took a look at some other companies and, you know, how they have pivoted in, you know, this time. And then we'll talk about the, you know, what you can do and what tools exist that will help you, you know, get started on this journey or improve this journey that you're on. Gyms, 34% of gym exercises have or plan to cancel their gym memberships after COVID-19. And more than 20 million gym memberships could be canceled due to COVID-19. 40% of exercisers worked out at home for the first time, right, during this time. So what has the pivot been, right? Well, selling home equipment and digital classes, right? In my experience with working with gyms, the way that they have prospered and, you know, kind of benefited from this was offering online classes, which, you know, have more of a reach because you're not limited to the amount of people in that particular class, right? So you can actually have, you know, 3 times the amount that you would have in a regular class in there. And then also selling home equipment. We work with a a company that specializes in jump ropes that have skyrocketed during this time because they capitalize on, their messaging on work from home, or work out from home, and it's really about changing that message and that content to reflect how, what the trend is right now, because, if you can't be in person, you can still connect, use the content to, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, use the content to drive the people's memberships, and then speak to, solutions for, people aren't going to stop working out. It's part of their everyday, right? It's part of who they are. So how do you reach them in a new way? Through digital. Cool. What else? Restaurants no longer have the ability to dine in. So where did they pivot? Well, they pivot to online orders, pickups, home delivery, pantry offerings, which is what I've seen a bunch of restaurants do. People need toilet paper. People needed, they needed wine and beer. They needed bread, right? So a lot of restaurants in our area, and just in general, have been offering essentials, right? And selling essentials, right? And gift cards, right? Merchandise and gift cards skyrocketed during this time because people wanted these restaurants to survive. So instead of saying, come in, right? They are saying, here, support us by doing this. And then when we're able to come back, you'll have it'll drive people through the door as soon as they open, right? So they'll end up doing even better, and it'll show commitment from customers to who want to support them through this time. I cut my own hair. So beauty parlors, they can't offer in-person services. So, and everybody's cutting their own hair. Well, so what did they do? Well, they use social media to stay connected with customers, offering tips and tricks and information. So they build business off of subscriber content. So a lot of beauty parlors are, becoming influencers, essentially, to remain connected to their base, and then creating content for people who are cutting their hair at home, right? And that content then gets large, and you can start making money off of content, right? So again, it's where is the need? None of these businesses are not needed. Everybody needs to do these things. These are essential things. You need to eat, you need to work out, and you need, to groom, right? So how do you take your business and pivot it to a digital space to work for what is there, is the opportunity is there. And the stats are not all bad. I mean, look at the interest of booze during this isolation, right? That's just an upward trend right there. So if you're in that industry, you're doing well. Cool. So, all right, I want digital. Tell me how. So we're going to start with your digital journey. Let's get down to business. So the next parts of the conversation are going to be just different tools that you can use to basically run your digital business, and feel free to ask any additional questions about these tools after we discuss. All right, so the really important one that has really helped me revolutionize my own time is separating your business and your personal digital space, right? So you have an office generally as a business, and that separates you from work to home. And that separation is really important for your own mind, and also for your ability to, organize your life. You do work when you're at the office, and you do, personal stuff when you're at home. Well, it should be the same within browsers, right? You should not have the same browser for your home versus your personal versus your business, right? So there is a tool called Chrome, which I use, called People, right? And you can find it at the top of your browser. If you have a Mac, it's right on your browser. If it's a PC, it's in the right-hand side of the browser. And you can create different people, right? Which have different browsers, right? And this allows you to save all of your extensions that you would use for work and all of your files and all your passwords to this particular browser, right? And separate it from your personal life. This is a huge time-saving thing. I don't have to log in, log out of anything. I just go to a different browser. All of my work stuff is there. If I have additional, I do a lot of not freelance, but like contract work for other businesses and agencies, and each one has its own email address. So think of it as, if you use Slack, which we'll talk about, just different teams, organized all by that particular browser. So this is super helpful. Manage your digital assets. I have hundreds of passwords. I cannot remember them all, and they should not all be one password. It is all one password, if you get hacked at any point in your life, you are in big bad trouble, right? Because they now know the password to your entire life, right? So you should have multiple different passwords, but the problem with that is you can't remember them all, right? So use a password management system. I use LastPass, but there are ones that exist that basically save all your passwords. You just need to remember one, and then you have access to all of your different passwords. And then if you need to change them, you can do it really easily within LastPass itself. And I've seen, the anecdote here is I've seen people get hacked, their websites get hacked, and because they have a bad password, and they get held hostage for their website back, right? So again, make sure that it's a hard password to crack. And you can do that by using, suggested passwords within these password management systems that you don't have to remember because it's all stored within password management system. File management system, shared document system for collaboration. Use something that you can share with people easily. I use Google Drive, Dropbox. Just make sure that you have your files organized. If you have a filing cabinet in your regular business, you should have a filing system in your digital business. Team communication. You want a way to quickly talk to people, and it should not be reliant on email, right? That's going to make your life crazy. So take the people that you work with all the time, right? And create a team management communication, right? And a great one to do that with is Slack. Slack is a digital team chat room, essentially, where you can add different teams and then have different chat rooms, right, within each team. And there's lots of other things that integrate with it. So for instance, Zoom integrates with it. So if I need to talk to my team really quickly, just do a Zoom call right from Slack, and it just pops right up on there, and we're in there in a second versus, sending an email to 10 people and saying, let's get on a Zoom. So I use Slack internally, and then I use email externally. Time tracking. Even if you're just a one-person digital business, this is really important for even just understanding what you do all day. Like for the sake of efficiency, we were really struggling in our agency early on because we didn't really understand where our time went, right? Who's doing what, who has time to do things. This gives us a really good sense. Toggle is my preferred one, but there's lots. Harvest, there are some other ones, but those are the two big ones that are coming to mind. Sometimes project management systems have them built in, but it really does help you kind of understand your own efficiencies and what you might be spending too much time on. And, ultimately everything in, a service-based industry is all time-based, right? So understanding that time will help you kind of, optimize the business, understand what you should be charging, and, so that you can, get to your bottom line. E-commerce, it's still important though, just to understand your own efficiencies. Video conferencing. We're on Zoom right now. There's a lot of them. My preferred is Zoom reluctantly, because I think in the last couple of months, it's been on a downward spiral. I did really like it, but there are other ones that exist out there. Google Hangouts, which is now Google Meet, which is getting better. It used to not be a great one, but it's getting better. There is Microsoft Teams, there's WebEx, there's plenty of them, Bluehost, there's a lot of different team management tools for video conferencing. But this is essential in building relationships digitally, right? Like you need to see people face to face. You need to have eye contact. You need to be able to convince people of your business and who you are, not on email, right? Because they need to get to know you and trust you before they sign, build, give you a deal in any sort. So having a video conferencing system and talking to people as if it was face-to-face is incredibly important for digital business. Calendar, I tend to be so busy that I cannot deal with my own calendar, which is why I use Calendly, which basically syncs with all the different calendars I have. Remember all those Chrome people? They all have different calendars associated with them. So this is one place that I can pull all my calendars together and then give out a link that says schedule an appointment with me. And it already syncs to my calendar. So if they select something, it's already, all my time that I'm busy is already integrated in there, which can be very helpful and a time saver. I've probably saved about, I would say, at least a day's worth of time in the last 6 months by sending out this link as opposed to looking at my calendar to see when I was available. Project management. You don't really need this until you scale up a little higher than like a very small business, but this is incredibly helpful to get your projects in order. My preferred one is TBD. We use Asana right now. It helps, I think it's pretty good. As an agency, it's kind of difficult when you have multiple projects that you're working on for multiple clients at any given moment to get a good project management system for that. But there are really good ones out there. Trello is more of a visual one. Asana is more of a calendar and to-do list one. Basecamp is a great one, but it's a little bit more expensive. So getting something that you can manage your projects because you're not going to be in the same room with people all the time. So this is a really good way of just making sure that everybody has, what they're supposed to be doing and everything's organized so that you don't, lose communication. 3-finger swipe. This is really important. I have multiple browsers up all the time, as you saw with the people and just like working on different things, possibly like, I could have maybe 6 browsers up at once. And this is more of a Mac thing, but it kind of works on PC too. 3 fingers, you swipe back and forth on your mouse, it goes in between browsers in full mode, right? And this is how I really, really quickly navigate to all the different things. In the morning, I will just pull up all my different browsers, have all my different people kind of up in full screen, and then I use 3-finger swipe to kind of go in between them to, so that I'm not like constantly like exiting out of certain things and like wasting my time with, logging in, logging out, pulling things up, so I have, my work kind of segmented and I go in between them. So this is a really useful mouse shortcut that can really speed up your efficiency. Digital business growth, how to optimize your space. How are we doing on time? We're pretty good. I think I am doing 1 minute a slide, which is what I was hoping for. So optimize the space. So what besides the tools, how do you grow a digital business, right? So we're going to look at some, things that exist in the digital world, and I'm going to explain, what can be done very briefly in terms of them and how they make up the ecosystem of a digital business. This is more on the marketing side. So websites, what website is right for you? Just because Wix has the most annoying commercials does not mean it is wrong for you. I personally would never be on a Wix, but that's, as a digital business, you really need to assess, what you're trying to achieve. and what website is going to allow you to achieve that. Wix might be a really good starting point. It's fast, it's easy, it's cost effective. You can get a website up in like a week, right? If you're trying to scale that website, you're gonna have a difficult time. Wix is a very difficult website to scale from an SEO perspective, and even from a functionality perspective. But in terms of getting a minimal viable product up, it might be great for you. Weebly too, Squarespace too. All of those things, are all those websites builders. They're great to start on, and they could be exactly what you need in that moment. And then when you're looking to really rise up and get some good SEO and get some good, additional functionality with the website, you might look to something like WordPress or Drupal, or something that you can build custom, or Shopify if you're an e-commerce store, something that you can build custom that allows you to scale more than a small website. So just knowing the limitations of where to start is really good, but also you don't need to create something perfect in the very beginning. You just need something to represent that people can buy on, and then as you grow, you can invest more into like a good website. Data, get that data. Install Google Analytics immediately. So Google Analytics is free. It provides a ton of data out of the box. You are not going to, the difference between, a brick and mortar store and a digital store is when the customer enters the store, you start to have all of the information about that customer when they walk in, right? So imagine if, for instance, you could put a tracking device on a person when they enter a car, drive, see your billboard, say, okay, I'm going to go to this store now, go to the store, and then purchase something, right? Well, you would never be able to do that in a regular store because that's stalking. But in a digital store, you can do exactly that, right? You can track the person from step A through step Z and start to see trends and start to understand how your store is performing, right? You don't have to guess on, is putting, a lawnmower in aisle Z and putting a hammer in aisle A the best place. Well, you can start to see where people are navigating to and how it affects your overall website performance just by having Google Analytics on the site. So it's like you can't really make any decisions in a business without data, or you can, but you won't know exactly what you're doing and won't be able to verify if it's the correct decision or not. So data will allow you to get smarter about what type of decisions you are making, because you'll have the data of how people are actually using the site readily available. Other things you can put on your site like that is a heat map, which will allow you to see where people are clicking and really kind of understand the overall internal layout of that site. SEO and content, understand the Google beast, right? Like your business depends on it, right? So you want to, in the beginning when you first have a website, or even if you have a website, right, and you're not just starting out, be aware that, you need to be known for anybody to really find you, right? So think of yourself as, if you're just starting out, think of yourself as a new doctor who moves to town, right? How are you going to get patients? Well, you can put out ads, right? So that people can start to know you. Or if you have friends in that town, right? You can talk to them and they can say, hey, I know this doctor, right? That doctor is awesome, right? You guys should go there, right? Well, that's what the basis of SEO backlinks are, right? All these different websites you can think of as your friends. And if they link back to you, you're showing Google that you are a reputable business, right? And then on top of that, you need to have content, right? You need to be able to build content that people identify with so that it matches with terms. So say I am a doctor, right? And I have a digital practice, right? I need to be writing about the things that I do so that when people are looking up, hurt shoulder doctor, I have some content on my website that provides information about that so that somebody will read it and then therefore, convert into a potential customer. So write content and build relationships with other websites to point back to you for SEO. Conversion rate optimization. Let your website do your data, and your data do the work for you. So learn what people are doing on your website. Run tests on your website based off of assumptions and hypotheses that you have on how, to change your website, or how people are utilizing your website, and what tests you can run that will potentially change people's outcome to bring you more conversions, right? So you see a lot of people are hovering around that first paragraph on your page, right? But there's no call to action, there, right? Well, what happens if we put a call to action there? Well, let's test that, right? And see if that brings people more likely to actually contact you, and use data to understand the difference between those. So I want to see, I want to know how many people contact me, and I want to know if putting a call to action there is going to make a difference. So I'm going to use the data to provide that. Paid search. Again, we talked about this with SEO, right? There's two things you can do. You can wait for enough people to understand that you exist, or you can put out brochures and advertisements. It's the same thing here, right? With paid search, right? Paid search is instant, right? You can start trying to target a keyword, and you can be up there the next day, right? So, if you're just starting out as a business, I always suggest starting out with some paid search while you're building your SEO, because it's faster. People are going to find you right away if you are doing it correctly for the terms that you're trying to rank for. You have to be careful about how you do it, because you could wind up spending a lot of money on terms that are not useful or things that you don't want to actually rank for. But if you do it the right way, it can be a very powerful, fast, results-based approach. Social media, content, remarketing, audience building, hyper-targeting. So all these things exist in the social media realm, right? You can build an audience there by providing content, right? You can start to get your brand out there. People can start to know you. They can start interacting with you. You can start having, showing people things that really drive engagement, and say, wow, this is a cool brand. You can also retarget people, right? So like when somebody goes to your site and then they go off of your site, you can send people ads based off of their interaction on social. I'm sure you've been to Amazon or somewhere, where you've seen all of a sudden, or you start talking about a brand and all of a sudden they're on your Facebook or Instagram. That's remarketing. And then audience building and targeting. You can specifically target, certain characteristics. Facebook, Instagram, they all have characteristics about you, about all your friends, about everybody that you're trying to target, right? They know how much you spent on different services last year. They know, what you like and what you don't like. They know what you talk about and what you don't talk about. If you're trying to target people who are politically active, they have that information. So you can pay to target your content or your company as just ads to reach these different types of audiences to drive awareness to you or your website. Still need help? Great. Well, there's a lot of specialists, resources, content, and creative. Get involved in a network, for instance, 1776, where there are a lot of different resources. Get involved with, people, consultants who can help on this type of thing, or going digital. A lot of it is trial and error, but use that data to make sure that you are, building the right type of business as opposed to just going at it blind. And that's really where digital stands out, is in the data. So thank you. I think that is, 35 minutes. So we do have some time for questions. And I'll just leave this slide up too, just so that you guys can see it. And yeah, feel free to ask questions.
And Josh, I'll actually start things off, but I did want
Right.
to mention, if the audience has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. It would also be great if you had specific examples, or issues that you're experiencing right now that you feel would be relevant for Josh. But I just wanted to ask, for people who are just starting their companies and they're having to make these decisions about which digital resources they need, who would you recommend from their team to be involved in these conversations? Like, would this be a CTO conversation?
Mostly probably a CMO or marketing director. I think it's very helpful to have a CTO involved because there are some technical requirements that potentially need to be discussed, and they should be involved in. Though I have seen that and this is no offense to CTOs, I have seen if the CTO is involved, it tends to go a lot slower than if they're not involved because of the technical. They want to really make sure that all the technical requirements are outlined first before. With adding things like Google Analytics or Tag Manager or something, you can do that. Everybody does it. So I think there's a tendency to overthink the complication with things, but anytime there's like additional pixels that you're putting on and additional JavaScript that there is going to be involved on the site, it's helpful to have the CTO involved. But for the most part, the conversations are going to come from, or at least the questions are going to come from, a CMO.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. And David, sorry, I saw that you unmuted at the same time, so feel free to ask your question.
Yeah, so I guess I just was interested in your thoughts about display advertising. So we've had mixed success or failure. It all revolves more around the tracking than other things. So I'll give you an example. So according to the tracking, we've seen that prospecting display advertising doesn't seem to get a lot of clicks. The people who click don't seem to necessarily, make a purchase. So there's that, which says that it doesn't work. On the other hand, we've done A/B tests where we did it in some cities and we didn't do it in other cities, and repeatedly that's shown incremental response.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing on the programmatic side. We've tried using some data, and it seems like it should work, but then the tracking would say that it doesn't work. Yeah. So I just wonder what your thoughts are on the success or failure. What would you look to determine whether prospecting display advertising is working or not?
Yep. So I'm gonna poke at the word working, because we're gonna talk about what the purpose of display is, and in my experience, the purpose of display is first touch attribution, right? You are not really going to be relying on it specifically to drive sales, right? Because that is what you're looking at probably in Google Analytics or the other platforms that you are looking at is most likely last touch attribution, right? It's that last non-direct click, right? Which is going to oftentimes be driven by search, paid search, and the more specifically I am ready to make this purchase right now, marketing tactics, right? Display really comes in on the first touch, right? Or if I'm assuming we're just talking about initial display and not really retargeting, but really on that first touch where somebody's seeing the brand for the first time, right? Somebody is looking to kind of understand more about the brand, but they tend to then Google you later, right? So it's really important to look at model attribution and compare, your first touch kind of your first click or first touch views for display up against your last, right, touch attribution, and see how many of those people actually did see an ad first. how many of those people actually did click an ad first before they actually came back to the site via a different tactic, which then ended up having them convert. So there are reports in GA and other, platforms that you can look at attribution modeling so that you can kind of see these. One thing that is really important to take a look at is view through conversions on Google Ads, and just make sure that you're kind of understanding the full user journey before dismissing it as something that doesn't really work. I have tended to see a lot of clicks though from display. Now those clicks that aren't necessarily click to buy type of clicks, but if you're not getting a lot of clicks on display, then possibly your targeting could be refined. Because I do know that like with most display campaigns that I've worked with, you do see a lot of clicks and a lot of views, but not necessarily a lot of attribution, or a last touch attribution if you're looking at it that way.
Right. So I guess we do see a lot of increase in visitors, which I suppose means a click.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
right.
Like you said, it doesn't necessarily translate to a visitor that made a purchase.
Yeah. So it's but like, it's an interesting experiment. And one of the experiments you could do is, run it for a little bit, see what your overall attribution is in comparison to when you don't run it, right? So, but that would basically indicate that, display does have an impact in the user journey. Again, you're not really going to see it in your last touch attribution reports because it is more of a first touch, part of the user journey. But capitalizing on knowing that, right, and really looking at that attribution model of this was what they saw first, these ads they saw first before coming back via Google search or paid search, is really important to understand so that you're not just dismissing it as it doesn't get us sales, because it might not directly get you sales, but as part of that user journey, which influences the sale, it is important.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
My question is from a different perspective. I run an IT agency. So what I was wondering if you could answer how to talk to a business to convince them to go digital. Someone who is not digital, that's a hard conversation to have with them, and especially if they don't know a lot about how the digital marketing and the digital world works. So they feel intimidated, or they kind of feel like, that's not going to work for my business. So if you could, talk a little bit about that,
Sure.
please.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting conversation to have, and I'm sure that the conversation looked a lot different 2 months ago. How the first place I'd kind of start was actually asking them, how they've been affected by not being digital, right? And if they have any opinions on it, right? A lot of times, especially, you see these brick and mortar shops with like, a lot of times jewelers are like this, or, some gyms feel they don't need it,
Right.
But I feel like, having kind of ammo in some level of statistics of like, this is, why you need to go digital is helpful. But ultimately, I think getting down to the root of why they haven't, right? This is a digital world right now. Why haven't they gone digital? Are their competitors digital, right? Do they have competitors in this space that when people are searching online, other people are coming up and not them? How many of those searches happen per day? What opportunities are they losing by not going digital? And really kind of analyzing the space, the competitors around their space, the different businesses that exist in even their local ecosystem of like, if they're online, and what they're missing out on by not being in the space, because they need to see it as not just a necessity, but an opportunity. right? So from you saying like it's necessary to be, you know, in business, they need to say, well, okay, well, why, right? And then comes the opportunity, right? And the opportunity is, well, these are the amount of searches that are happening online for your business, your type of business all day. These are the competitors that you're losing business to because, you know, they're finding them and not you, right? And so basically, you know, use the data and use the competitive research to kind of drive that conversation.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Great, thank you. And we have time for one more question, if there is one from the audience. All right, I don't see anyone unmuting. So Josh, I did want to wrap up with one last question for you.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
No problem.
So I know that you had mentioned, you know, if you needed additional help to get involved in some communities and networks, do you have any recommendations on what that looks like?
Yeah, totally. So there are lots of communities in Philadelphia that can help, you know, not just in digital, but just as a small business in Philadelphia. There's Philly Startup Leaders. There is 1776. There is Indie Hall. These are all communities of people who are in, you know, this space that you can meet people who are, you know, either if you're trying to expand, you can meet people who are doing similar things and can help with that, or, you know, there are just different networks to get involved in. There's also, you know, lots of events that are happening, not really physically right now, but digitally, like Philly Tech Week. They're planning their you know, digital conference. Technically Media is just a great resource to follow, just to follow along with the digital space. And then there are like online networks as well, you know, different Facebook groups, different LinkedIn groups that, you know, are really community oriented and they are willing to help, you know, and give free advice, you know, and you really like in the communities that I'm in, at least, you know, the basic mentality is not how can we get business, it's how can we help people, you know. And I think that's a really warm place to be, and it's really helpful to be. And yes, sometimes business comes out of it, but for the most part it's really just about helping that community you know, prosper. So, you know, look for, you know, data communities or Google Analytics communities, look for you know, website WordPress communities. And, you know, there are communities out there that can really help with specialties if you're looking at a specific, you know, type, and ask those questions there. You know, there's people who are willing to help. And then also, you know, feel free to reach out to me. You know, I'm a great resource as well. And I've been around this field for 6 years. So I can point you in the direction if, you know, if it's something we don't do, or I can point you to us if it is something, or I can just point you in a direction of a network, you know, that you're specifically looking for.
I think we need to do. We need to stop believing the myth. Okay. In this country, what we call education is actually in.
I don't know where that's coming from. That's okay.
I think that was a participant. I just muted. So.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, that's great, and thank you so much for sharing. And again, this is a recorded session, so I'll be sharing that with everyone that's been on this call. That way you can look back at the resources that Josh had mentioned. And thank you again, Josh, for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. Appreciate everybody's time, and talk to you soon.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.